What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Today is Best Served Podcast 277. We're talking Puff, a pizza story with Eric Davies of Puff Truck Pizza in Elburn, Illinois. This is Best Served New Volume 3, Episode 1 of 8. You know that this series is so fundamentally important to everything that we do. My personal mission to really unlock, amplify the worth and work of those in the food and beverage industry, those who feed their communities. And very excited about this series. We're going to talk mission story today. We're going to get into customer archetypes. We're going to get into our employees. We're going to get into the business model, menus, marketing, all of that through this series. So with no further ado, I want to bring in Eric, owner of Puff Truck Pizza. Eric, good to see you.
Likewise, Jensen. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm excited to kick this off. I like your on brand already this morning. Good work. That Puff Truck Pizza. Let people see the logo. I like it. Smart. So what you and I are going to do is we're going to dig into your backstory a little bit. I always find that people's kind of origin stories really inform who they are, how they navigate this industry. So I think it's fundamentally important. And we see today more than ever that people want the backstory. They want to feel like they're a part of something versus just getting the food. The food better be on point and exactly what they expect and have that value. Yet the story is really why people are interacting. So we're going to dig into that backstory a little bit. We're going to talk about kind of the business and what it's all about. And then specifically, we'll get into that mission story and really kind of pull at those threads and find those little nuggets that are just so uniquely you, so uniquely Puff Truck Pizza and what you're all about. Does that sound good?
Absolutely. I'm excited.
All right. Yes, sir. Let's get into it. So backstory a little bit. Reading that this morning to your backstory, which I loved. Also, just we're going to have you write an article for what we're doing, at least a couple, because you definitely have a way of kind of telling your story through the written word. So let's dig into that a little bit more as we go through this series for sure. That's not always the case with us in the food and beverage industry. So your backstory, I want to start actually before you were even born. Grandfather was in the industry, had a restaurant, and that really set a tone for you. So tell us a little bit about that and has that an impact on you getting into this industry?
Sure. So in my family, it's kind of always been family folklore. My mom mainly being the one retailing stories of her being a youngster about the age my son is now, bopping around in her dad's restaurant. They were in the same county that I operate in now, which is kind of a fun coincidence that we were able to, kind of occupy some of the same historical area that he did. And but he there's all these stories of my grandfather dropping an entire can of chocolate sauce all over the floor and how they had to clean that up one day, and just these giant banquets they would run for hundreds and hundreds of old timey Elks Lodge folks and stuff.
That's exactly what I had in my head. Of that was like the Elks Lodge, like those big, huge banquet halls of like the 40s and 50s and all that. I love it. Makes sense to me. Yeah, keep going. This is great.
Exactly. Huge pig roasts or giant turkey dinners the day before Thanksgiving, things like that. So, that's always kind of been the folklore in my family. And I'm one of 3 siblings, and we've kind of always, every one of us in some degree has wanted to, kind of jump and follow that path. My sister's a huge foodie. My brother is actually on board on the company with me and helps me engineer a bunch of stuff. So I think all 3 of us take that thread of what Grandpa used to do and try to work that into our lives. And ultimately, I wonder if my grandpa would be proud of the things that I've built. That's the goal there, right? Is to help that family legacy, even though we're not necessarily famous by any means or whatever, but just kind of fulfill that legacy is, I think, a challenge and a goal.
I think I love everything that you're saying. I think it's important. I think it's something that drives you deep inside, which I think is really great. And I'm interested because you hear this a lot, people getting in the industry. It's kind of like, okay, that's a great high school, college type job, but when are you going to get a real job? Did you ever, and you did go get a real job, right? You made the transition. This was a side hustle. Then the pandemic hits and all of a sudden you have to go whole hog with this thing. But what was the pressure? There's always pressure within families. What was the pressure within the family? Was it like, we love that you want to get in this industry? It's like it, was so hard on our grandparents and our family, and we had to struggle. Like, what was that like for you? Did you feel the pressure one direction or the other?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there was some pressure to succeed because my mom's the underline of the whole story behind my grandpa's businesses was, my mom will tell me, is like, well, he never made a dime with any of those. He was so generous, or he would get,
Yeah.
he wasn't banking, with his, because for him, I feel like it was more of a, maybe it was more of a passion thing or more of a camaraderie thing with his buddies to do that, like the Elks Lodge type of deal. But
Right.
I always wanted to I've always been a little bit more business focused in this endeavor. So my original goal has always been to be successful financially, and to have this be ultimately, like you said, it was at first a side hustle, which was supposed to support my income or whatever.
Yeah.
But now it's become everything. So
Everything.
that path has kind of been an exponential ride for me, but I'm trying to embrace it, and I like to embrace challenge. That's one of the I think that's one of the traits that you need to have if you want to be a successful business person or successful chef or whatever it is.
Critical,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I think that's going to come up again. When I was reading what you wrote from the couple times you and I have spoke together, that was clear to me that there's the kind of this drive to push this legacy forward, to do it in a kind of uniquely your way, to have that pride of
yeah,
ownership, and now you have a
like
son that you're thinking about legacy
yeah,
beyond yourself as well, and what that looks like. So, for
absolutely.
you, it that seems like to me, and please answer this, but that seems like to me is you take on that challenge. It doesn't seem overwhelming and daunting to you, even though it's overwhelming and daunting in the reality of
Yeah,
running a business.
yeah. I mean, I kind of liken myself to like in very basic terms, kind of like the dumb dog, right? Like if your dog bumps his head on something, kind of shakes it off and is like, oh, I don't know, whatever. He doesn't get too hurt by it. He's not sitting there pouting that his head hurts, right, and has a headache. The dog just kind of gets hit on the head, wiggles a little bit, and then he's fine again. And it's kind of oblivious to that, like the weight and the pressure of it all. I'm not saying
Yeah,
that I'm oblivious to it, but I mean, if you can kind of compartmentalize it and not let it crush you, you can break
you,
it down into those little pieces and
you
attack it.
shake it off.
Yep.
Yeah, you got to be able to shake it off in this industry for sure. That's an absolute. So okay, so that really sets a foundation. I think we're gonna come back to that. I wanted everyone to understand that your family legacy. Now
Yep.
you, as an operator, you had to kind of go through the 9 to 5 corporate job. That informed a lot of your understanding of businesses. Then coming to this, as a side hustle, family is involved in the business, and now it's all in on this because you were pushed to it by the pandemic, and now you have to navigate what that means. So really good. I want to talk about kind of the phases that we take you through, and where we start, we call get clear on why you exist. And what you did was you kind of answer a sequence of questions is talking about, why you exist, why you do this work, who inspires you. And we really kind of touched on that. We also dig into, what separates you from others. How do you feel when you're creating your product? What sense of self does that create for you? What do you expect kind of your customers? How do you want them to interact, to feel when they're part of what you're doing? And then we kind of like, what are some keywords, some things that really motivate you, especially when the shit hits the fan, and it always does in this industry. How do you adapt and overcome? How do you lean on your team, your family to kind of get through that, and what compels you, what motivates you is a big theme kind of throughout this. So why you exist. So I want to touch on that a little bit. Give us kind of the elevator pitch, why you exist. What is the work that you do? What's important to you when it comes to Puff Truck Pizza?
So for me, the number one thing is fun. So what I'm trying to bring into the world through Puff Truck Pizza or through my other endeavors in life is fun. I'm a semi-professional musician. I get up stage and play guitar and entertain folks. I'm up there to make their night great, right? Like I'm there to bring spark of that fun into someone's world. So that's kind of another thing that motivates me, along with that family history. So what we do with Puff Truck Pizza is we try to embody fun in everything we do. every event that we do, we try to put a fun twist on it. Every recipe that we have is some kind of food truck inspired fun way to deliver a dish to you. So, and even our attitude, like on social media, who we are as a brand, is meant to convey that we're kind of a rolling party. And wherever our food truck shows up, or wherever you hang out in the store, we've got music going, we've got some fun stuff happening throughout the year. We throw a couple of block party things here and there. So some community events. We had a car show on the parking lot here at our restaurant last summer. So we're just trying to incorporate as much joy into people's worlds as we can, however that is. And
we need that now more than ever, Eric, as you know, for sure. And it's interesting dynamic where it's like, it's just food. Don't take it so seriously. And food can change somebody's day, which can change somebody's life. I truly believe that. Change one day, change a life. Like, you change somebody's trajectory, because there's plenty that's pulling you down. And if food and interacting over food can bring that joy for a moment, I'm all in. I don't know that there's a more important endeavor in life than be willing to feed people and bring joy, like, full stop, the end. Like, that's it. That's the whole game that we're playing. So I appreciate that. I also like that it feels like fun is kind of this lens. You basically say, are we going to put this on the menu? Are we going to do this event? Are we going to create any kind of interaction? And then the next question you ask yourself, is that fun? And I think the questions we ask ourselves are really important. I think of it like, if I make this decision, would my community be best served? If I make this decision, would my family be best served? If I make this decision, would my business be best served? Like, that's literally the name of this enterprise that we have here. This show is Best Served, because I think about that all the time. So fun is kind of that lens that you put everything through. I think that's important. I want everybody to pay attention to that, because we get pulled in a million directions. There's so much hype out there. There's so much to chase. There's so much animosity, so much blame to go around, so many pitfalls in this industry and life in general. If you just have a few core values, a few questions that you ask yourself to help you navigate, it makes all the difference in the world. And I appreciate that you have at least one, that is like fundamental and focusing for you. Will this bring fun and joy to people? Like, I'm hovering on this for a while, because I want people to know how important it is. And Eric, how much I appreciate that. Fun and allowing that to be a guiding principle, I think, is so important. And so I think you kind of broke down how that's happening within the business. Let's talk about kind of the customer experience of that a little bit. So you mentioned kind of some of the happenings, but I get that food. How do you feel like that's represented, right? What's that feeling, that emotional transaction and exchange that you're giving? What do you expect somebody to kind of say after they have some of that dish? Obviously, that was fun. Kind of give us a little more depth to that from the customer perspective.
So, kind of circling back to what we were talking about just a moment ago, one of our taglines, like you're saying, to the fun part, right, is like, our tagline is not fancy, just fun. See, so like, we're gonna let the other fancy guys take care of your fancy food experience, but when it comes to kind of the simple food experience, we've got you. So we're kind of taking away some of that pressure, right? When you come in, you maybe don't have the expectation of it being super delicious. You just maybe expect it to be filling in your belly. But what we're doing is kind of fulfilling that other need that you have that you maybe don't realize of having a fun, enjoyable experience. So when you say putting things through that lens of kind of like, that's how we generate all of our recipes, is something that we know is going to satisfy your taste buds, right? But then it's also going to be something that gives you a feeling of enjoyment. And maybe it's something that you could go brag about to your friends, like, hey, I found this little spot that not a lot of folks know about, and they've got a great cheeseburger. You guys should go try it. And then that gives people kind of this little coin that they have of some street cred coin, or let's call it Bitcoin, or kind of idea, right? So then they then have an experience that other folks don't have unless they come here.
Yep, I like that. You're allowing them to pass on some social equity. I think that's important dynamic and important interaction. And the fact that you're thinking about that means that every handmade puff right? Every pizza or just some good fried dough dipped in sauce, whatever that is, whatever that actual dish is, what you're allowing is that dish to multiply past the person that is having it. Hugely important. If every single dish only has a single transaction, it's really challenging. You have to do so many individual transactions to create critical mass for your business. What you're talking about is exponential impact on every single dish. This is an important, absolutely important dynamic that people need to think about. You are making an emphasis on making sure that one dish equals 10 interactions, right? So I think that's super important. So that sense of legacy, I want to come back to that a little bit, because what you're talking about now is what I think is so important, what you leave the world, right? We understand why you're doing what you do because of the family legacy. I'm interested in this, the sense of legacy, what you leave the world clearly is defined by this idea of the fun, of that somebody is going to take a moment out of their day and tell somebody else about a great experience that they had, a new experience that they had, which I think is so important. That is an impact that you leave and an impression that you leave, because what you really want is, what you want is somebody to move away from Elburn, Illinois, and yearn for that you're the spot when they come back to visit family, that it's the must-have. That is creating a quintessential sense of belonging, a quintessential sense of legacy, especially if it becomes generational, which I know is your hope there. So think about that a little bit, dive into that, how you interact with, and next week we'll talk about Elburn, Illinois quite a bit more, but how you interact with your community in a way that you're trying to be that place, because I know you are. You want to be the place that people go back to every single time they come home for the holidays, when they're out for college, or when they bring their kids back, years and years from now. So dig into that a little bit.
Sure. So I think, we definitely do have a longevity plan as far as like, building out a little bit more regionally and expanding from where we are. We definitely want to be that place that gets you coming back. We've got lots of, those regular customers too are the ones that really kind of supported us through through a lot of these challenging times, right? So I've got a gentleman that comes in every single weekday without fail, and if he's not there, he must be sick or something's wrong, right? So those customers are the folks that it's like they almost become part of your family in that way. So those folks that because they're supporting my family when they come and purchase food from me. So it kind of becomes this relationship that you need to build, or that is helpful to build with most folks. So and then when we have a customer that comes in, really the experience that I'm trying to get them to say is to kind of be kind of come in with an underdog attitude and then come out with a much better experience than they expected.
Yes, so, we talk about that a lot, Erica. This is perfect, where you want to underpromise and overdeliver. And the majority of things we buy, we interact with, they overpromise and underdeliver. And restaurants and food and beverage, we struggle with this a little bit because it's not inauthentic, yet we put up a facade. It's very much our job to transport people away from their shit day or whatever it is and say, we talk about in the industry, it's like, leave your shit at the door, put on a smile. It's like our responsibility. And it's a whole nother topic, but sometimes there's vulnerability in that, because it's sometimes we're having to put on a fake face. It's real in that that's the experience we want for people. It's real in that we're creating the truth of the product and the interaction and the hospitality. Yet we're still putting up somewhat of a facade. And that facade is always like, this is great, this is great, this is great, this is great, because we need people to feel and resonate with that, because we need them to come back, buy the product, have a great time. Absolutely. Yet in that, we are always saying it's always going to be this shiny, beautiful thing. And the reality is it's not. Sometimes it needs to be, we're going to struggle together, and this handmade puff is just going to be the one thing that brings you just a little bit of normalcy or a little bit of joy in this day. And that's enough. It doesn't have to be more than that. And I think that's a little bit of a vulnerability. So the under promise, over deliver aspect, I think, is great. Now, that doesn't mean you need to set the expectations so low. You just need to set a realistic expectation. So, and for that, dig a little bit deeper in that, because I know you got kind of some taglines and some thinking and
Sure.
some philosophy around being able to deliver value, I think is something that you mentioned quite a few times. What does that mean to you?
So to me, and it kind of ties in with what you said about like what legacy are we going to leave behind, right? So what delivers value for me is hitting on those touch points that a particular customer's needs. So we have kind of a couple of different customer archetypes that we feed into that are my base customers, and the one is kind of construction workers, auto mechanic type of guys. That's like I was talking about that customer before that comes in every weekday. He works at an auto shop. We're right next to McDonald's, and so we're that luring choice right next to the mass-produced place where we have the different unique items. And he would rather come to me instead of giving his dollar to them. So there's lots of those guys, and the word of mouth amongst those folks goes miles, right? So
everything.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of traction from guys telling their other work buddies to come have food at our place for lunch. So that's the bulk of our lunch business is those type of folks. And so when we need to, what their value is to them is to come in to walk away feeling full and not feeling ripped off. And maybe a little bit of that social equity. They're not as concerned with that social equity. They're not going to go share their experience on social media. That's not as beneficial to me. But what is beneficial to me is their word of mouth, their repeatability, and so that's what you need. What I try to do there is to appeal to that kind of folks, that the everyman, because the kind of market that we're in is kind of a little bit of a rural community, a little bit of a farm community. When I first kind of started this, I was going a little bit in the fancy route, and then I kind of pulled back and decided that I needed to maybe widen my appeal more and not be such a niche kind of menu.
I bet you said you pulled back, but I bet you they pulled your ass back down to earth a little bit, right? It was like, hey, listen here, kid. We like what you're about, but we're going to need you to meet us where we are. And I think that is a hugely important thing, that you are in touch with the community. And again, next week, we're really going to dig into that. I really want to understand everything about that everyman, everything about that construction worker or that mechanic. And I like that. This is interesting. This is going to come up a couple more times. I want to jump back in, and I'll finish my point.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just saying. So delivering value to that mechanic or to that worker guy is one thing, and then there's a whole other group of customers where we try to appeal to what their needs are and to what they see as value, right? So that other group of folks is generally like the mom of the house, the female head of household, 25 to 45. They're usually the ones
that next week. I really want to get into them next week. So I want to bring us back to that story. One thing that I just want to lay out there that I want to make sure that doesn't just get glazed over. We'll get into it a little bit more, especially when we get into marketing. So I want to make sure we come back to it. I want to have on record, you are competing with McDonald's. That's fucking crazy and brilliant. I love that you're straight up competing with McDonald's in a different way. You're not trying to match dollar for dollar to market them. You are imagining the difference in the interaction and the way the difference in that interaction can set you apart from them. And in that, you're competing with them. So I think that's an important distinction, something for us to think about for sure. I want to get into your mission story. So I want to pop that up here. Puff Truck Pizza is driven to bring fun, family-friendly food into the world. So we talked about the fun. We talked about family. Now family-friendly, you also then want that to be inviting for the family. And then you have a global vision for this. This isn't just into your community, it's into the world. So you're thinking beyond just what's right in front of you, which I think is important too. We literally mentioned it. What you leave the world is kind of the way we think of sense of legacy. So you're already thinking about that. Now, you have brilliant foundation, and fun and family need to be at the epicenter of this. What we're going to pull at every week, and one of the things that's going to happen, Eric, is we're going to, like next week, we're going to take this mission statement and have you tweak it even a little bit more and pull a little bit more at it, because I want everybody to feel like they're a part of this process with you, and even hold us accountable to say, all right, next week we're going to show them kind of the updated mission story, evolve it a little bit, and have them go, okay, I see how we're getting closer and closer, getting more and more depth. And so what I want to basically do at any time is that if I copied and pasted anything else into this, McDonald's is driven to bring fun, family-friendly food into the world. Would that be a true statement? That is a true statement. Like, and we want to make sure that it's so uniquely personal to you. Now, that's debatable. All of those things are debatable. Yet I want to make sure it's so personal. When somebody says Puff Truck Pizza and the mission story, that they're able to say that is only and uniquely you. So I want to think about that a little bit. Let's go into family-friendly food into the world a little bit. For you, family-friendly, we talked about the construction worker, right? We talked about you want to be for the everyman. So let's dig into that. Why family-friendly? What does that mean for you? Who does that represent?
For me, that represents my family. My 8-year-old son and my wife and myself. We're a small little nuclear family that when we decide to dine somewhere, it's gotta be worth it. So folks in that kind of sector generally tend to go for chain restaurants because they know that there's consistency there, or they maybe already know the menu. I remember several times we would go to a Chili's just because we know that my son would eat something there. So there's little things like that make that's what I'm trying to drive at, right? So I'm trying to appeal to everyone from 8 to 80 and everywhere in between, that's approachable and appealing to any taste, really, right? So we can go from very, very simple to a really complex pizza with tons of ingredients and balsamic vinegar and stuff like that on it to appeal to a more adult taste. But really what we're trying to deliver is that experience that's consistent and reliable, and you're getting value from it. So when we're delivering to that customer, those are the points we try to hit there. And
so I like that, Eric. Let's stick with that.
Also kind of an approachable nature, right? So because there's no pressure, because we're not pretentious or fancy or anything, you can walk in and not feel like, you can walk in kind of already knowing that your kids are going to like what we have. And then there's options for the adult as well. So it's kind of that wide appeal.
Yeah. So let's think about that a little more. So wide appeal, I like, and also trying to be everything for everybody is a huge vulnerability, right? And so I think you're understanding how to navigate that based on some of those archetypes, and we'll touch on that a little bit more. What I want to think about is the family-friendly. It doesn't personalize the statement you just made. What you just said gives me chills. I'm like, yes, we need that. That is the way that we need to be thinking about what we run. Family-friendly sounds like something that's safe, right? And so I want to find those things that are personal. You said things like consistency. You said things like value. You said things like, having expectations, that the family feels like they know what they're getting themselves into. So I want you to really explore that, because somewhere in there is the statement that is unique to you and exactly what people are going to walk in. Family friendly is still such a broad category. What does family friendly mean for one family or another? Obviously, it's going to be unique. What you're actually going to deliver is the little nuance that you just mentioned. So I think in this, with taglines and some of those things, we can directionalize those for certain archetypes, for certain types of people. So you mentioned the mom and the family. We talked about the construction workers. So we'll do that kind of in the taglines. But whatever the interaction is, that is the same for all of them. And family friendly does not necessarily appeal to, the single construction worker who's 26 years old. Yet that is a prime demographic for you. Absolutely. What does is the consistency, the expectation, the value. So that's the part of what you're talking about family friendly that I want to really dig into, because that's the actual thing that they're searching for. Family friendly is like a broadening category. So that's where I think you can really pull at that thread. And then people go, yeah, every time I go there, I know exactly what to expect. I get what I want. It's great value. It's consistent every single time. When I recommend it to somebody else, they have the same experience that I have, and that means something to them. So I want to really pull at that. Bringing food into the world. I want to touch on this a little bit, and then we'll wrap up. So the food that you're bringing in the world, you want to do something a little bit different. You want to do something that's slightly unique, something that's a little bit playful. These things have kind of all been touched on. This handmade puff pizza style. Why was this the way that you wanted to kind of deliver bringing food into the world. Tell us a little bit about that, just to kind of tease people. We're going to talk about it way more and dig into it when we talk about what's on the menu, but let's talk about that for just a moment so people kind of understand the food you're trying to bring into the world.
So the food I'm trying to bring into the world is I'm trying to bring the freshest possible pizza experience that you can have, right? And also, you may have thought pizza was played out, but we've got a new spin on it. Okay, so when we explain to folks when they walk up to the truck or the restaurant, they maybe don't know what a handmade puff is, and we explain to them that it's like a pizza sandwich, deep fried, topped with garlic butter and Parmesan, served with a red sauce to dip it in. But you can have it customized and filled with any toppings that you like. So there's a customization factor there where folks love that kind of pick and choose point where they can make it exactly how they like their item made. So it's not, and then that also lets them know that it's not some pre-made thing that's pressed in from a factory and frozen and then dropped into the fryer, right? We are making it by hand with the ingredients that you've chosen. It literally gets fried up and handed to you within 30 seconds of coming out of that fryer. So it's super hot and fresh and tasty and coming to you faster than any other pizza delivery way, because there's a lot of folks that come in asking for, like, do you guys have a slice? Well, that would have meant that I would have to have baked the pizza off an hour ago, had slices cut up and sitting in a warmer. Well, that's not fresh, that's not tasty, and it's been sitting there for a long time. That's the antithesis of what we are, right? One of our taglines is life is too short to eat gas station pizza. So we want you to have when we make other items too, the burger and other items, the veggies and stuff are cut moments before the burger is assembled. It's not lettuce that's sitting in a bin for who knows how long at some of these places. So the ingredients are as fresh as possible. The experience is as fast and quick as possible. And to me, I think it's the tastiest way to eat pizza.
Yes. So that's the food that you're bringing in the world. That has depth and meaning. I want that in the mission story, right? I want to have that, that one sentence, two sentence type thing that really sets the tone for people, that they go, I know exactly what I'm going to get, right? And then you have marketing language and other taglines, but that mission story needs to set the tone for, this is why we exist. This is who we serve. This is what you can expect from us time and time again. It also, like, your team is going to know that. So that mission story needs to be that North Star where your team says, that is why I work here. That's why I'm a part of this, because I'm going to make sure that people get the freshest, hottest, or whatever that dynamic is every single time. And I am fully committed to that, because that is that guiding principle for you, for your team. And especially as you grow, it's going to be so, so important. A lot of times people say, well, that goes without saying. It doesn't. Things that go without saying, you say them earliest, most often, and loud as possible, because it needs to be that anchoring and guiding principle. So I think that's important. So I want to have you really think on that. The food that you're bringing into the world, there's a specific way that you're trying to bring that out. The mission story, I want it to reflect that. I want people to feel that when you say, this is why we exist. Puff Truck Pizza is driven to bring fun food that is consistent, bringing value, that is the freshest. Burn your mouth when you have our food because it's so fresh and hot. That's a whole story, but there's something there. Like, those are that's unique, right? I think we wordsmith that and craft that a little bit, but that is exactly when they walk up, no matter what they order, no matter who they are, they will get that experience. And anybody that works for you is there to purely deliver that experience. Everything else is just details. So that's what I'll dig in. So we'll evolve that a little bit. And every week we might pop it up and be like, hey, where are we at with that mission story? And it's evolving. And that feedback loop that we're talking about next week will be important as well with customers, the feedback, and then getting the nuance, pulling the nuance and individualism out of each of these statements that you make in your mission statement. You're pulling those in to become their own taglines, their own part of a one-liner that you're kind of delivering for that unique guest. So this is great, man. You got a really, really strong foundation. I appreciate it for sure. It's fun working with you on this.
Yeah, likewise.
All right. That is going to be it for this episode. Again, this was Best Served Podcast 277. Puff. You're going to hear a lot more of the word puff throughout this. And Eric Davies and I are going to really, really dig into that story. Next week, again, we're going to be talking Finding Elburn, Illinois, which for anybody who doesn't know is, in the Chicago area, but right. Where on a map? Find it on a map. And definitely go and check out in the comments. You'll have links to be able to check out the websites of what Eric is working on with Puff Truck Pizza. You get to see some of the food, some of the truck itself. Check them out on social media as well. You can start to get an idea of that voice so you can be a part of this whole journey. And then big shout out, as always, to Jordan Bush and Krista Young, the crew at 7 Shifts, who really are gracious in underwriting this series, allowing us to bring more human stories to the forefront of what's happening in hospitality. You know how important that is to me. We need more voices included, and this is just one of the great ways that we get to share that. So, Eric, appreciate you, my friend. I will see you next week. Have a good one.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chef.
All right. Cheers. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.